Hello everybody, I am Keaton Gummerson of Kinetic Catholic Ministries, back with another video. I hope that you all are having an absolutely wonderful Tuesday so far. I know that I am. Really quickly, before we get into it, number one, YouTube has been just disabling my comments for some reason. Like, I don't know why, they just have. If you shows comments not shown, that's not me. They used to disable my comments a lot, then they kind of stopped, now they're doing it again. So I'll try to go back in and allow all those comments again. Again, it's not me. If you want to tell us what you thought about the video, you can email us directly at kineticcatholicministries@gmail.com. Secondly, I want to make it clear, this is not just like a Lord of the Rings YouTube channel. I'm not going to be making videos after every episode or after every 3 episodes of the Rings of Power. But I thought that since I made a video a couple weeks ago kind of previewing the first couple episodes, to number one, talk about them. The first 3 episodes are out. I've seen them, my thoughts on them. But then number 2, explain that I will now most likely only be talking about Rings of Power after each season, which I don't know how many episodes are in a season, but I'm assuming a lot, so that would take a pretty long time to get through. So my number one thing in the last video that I talked about Rings of Power is how, like, the Lord of the Rings had a lot of Catholic undertones, because even though J.R.R. Tolkien, like, didn't explicitly want those Catholic undertones, didn't explicitly want it to be a book just for Catholics, and it's not. It was a book for anybody. Those are still in them, right? The Christian undertones, it was such an important part of his personality, he couldn't keep that entirely out of what he wrote. And those are evident, and they're evident when they're translated to movies with the Peter Jackson films in the early 2000s that, in my opinion, that I think is completely right, that are the best movies ever made. So Rings of Power has big shoes to fill, but my number one thing with it a couple weeks ago was, oh, well, will it still have those Christian undertones? Will it kind of ruin the Christianity of Middle-earth? After the first 3 episodes, the answer to that is, it's fine so far. Like, when it comes to when it comes to Christianity in general, like, it doesn't necessarily undermine it, but it's not explicitly nearly as Christian as I think the movies were. I think it's a lot more violent than the movies. The movies were violent at points, so the movies were pretty violent, but I think that the shows are also. I think it kind of ruins that element. But as of right now, it hasn't completely, like, undermined the Christian undertones. It just doesn't really have them. I didn't really expect it to have them with it being Amazon, but the fact that it at least isn't necessarily undermining the Christianity that's prevalent within Middle-earth, I guess it's okay. As a show, it's below average, in my opinion. I think it looks beautiful. It's a $1 billion show, and you can definitely see that. Like, it's obvious it's a $1 billion show. It looks absolutely gorgeous. It looks absolutely beautiful. The visual effects are amazing. They have some shots that are just like, it's hard to describe how great those are. But with all the money that they had, it looks like they spent it almost all on that, rather than maybe on writing. That would have been a little bit better. While it takes place in Middle-earth and has some Middle-earth characters, it kind of doesn't feel like a Middle-earth story written by Tolkien. It feels like Amazon creating their own story just in Middle-earth. Like, they just had a storyline, and then they put it in Middle-earth and filled in the characters, and that's what they went for. Which is really disappointing, honestly, because it covers the period of the Second Age. And I'm not, like, a genius on Middle-earth lore where I can tell you exactly what date and year certain battles were within Middle-earth, because the history in Middle-earth is, like, insane how much Tolkien wrote. But what I do know enough to tell you that a lot happens in the Second Age, and that the Second Age spans over a long period of time. And so, I mean, I get you have to condense stuff when you're converting stuff to film. Like, the Lord of the Rings movies, they're condensed to, like, several months, whereas in the books it takes place over, like, 7 years. So I get that. But they're condensing a lot, it seems like, in a very short amount of time. And in the first 3 episodes, are supposed to kind of get you caring about the characters, really grab your attention. I really can't tell you the names of any of these characters. Like, I don't care about them. And if a show doesn't make you care about the characters, that's a worrisome thing. I know Galadriel and Elrond, right? We know them from the movies, from the Lord of the Rings. I can tell you the name of Nori, one of the Hartfoots. I can probably only tell you her name because it's, like, the most simple. All the others, like the elf, like, I can't tell you these people's names, and that's a bad thing when you're 3 episodes, and each episode being around an hour long, so around 3 hours into a story, and I can't tell you the main characters' names, because you haven't made me care about them enough to want to learn their names. You know what I mean? Like that's an issue. There's also so many main characters. Like the first episode, rather than there being a coherent story, you're kind of just taken from place to place, being introduced to different characters. That it's a little bit overwhelming. Doesn't feel like it fits, especially when so many of the characters are made up by Amazon. Like Nori, the Heartfoot, not a real character. The elf, whatever his name is, it's like the main elf besides Elrond. He's a made-up character, at least I believe. It's just things like that it just doesn't feel like a Middle-earth story, and it's especially true with the character of Galadriel. Again, I'm not a master expert on Middle-earth lore, but I can tell you enough to tell you that Galadriel is not the fighting warrior commander like she is in the show. She's just not. She's a different character. And she's a lady of Lothlorien. And obviously she has a lot more history in the Second Age. She does a lot more things. But be a commander of the North armies, as they like to describe her, isn't one of them. I also think that the idea of like the evil in this show isn't as well thought out or written as it is in the Lord of the Rings movies and the Lord of the Rings books, right? What's really cool about the Lord of the Rings movies is that we hear whispers of darkness, right? We hear whispers of evil. You don't actually see that there are orcs and that there are bad guys until you get to Saruman and Isengard, and you get shots of that, and it's like a big reveal, like, look at all that's happening here. Look at all this evil that's actually been present the whole time, and that's what's causing it, right? You get a little bit with the Nazgul. Obviously, you have the Nazgul in there, which is like flashes of evil. But for the most part, you have like, oh, there are whispers of evil, and then the reveal at Isengard and Mordor. Because again, you see Mordor, I guess, in the beginning with Gollum and his torturing. But still, it's a reveal. It's made to be a big thing, right? Like, here's where the evil is. And that's the case with Mordor and Isengard in the films. The Rings of Power, it's just kind of like, oh, there might be some bad guys, and then it's, oh, here are orcs, so there are some bad guys, you know what I mean? It's not like a big, like, oh, like, this is what's going on, and maybe that's coming, I don't know, maybe I'm too soon to judge. I just feel like I'm not as impacted by the, like, bad guys in this one, like the bad guys, you know what I mean? And again, part of that is, I get it, it's a show, you have to draw it out more than you do in a movie, but still, I just feel like you're not really all too threatened by the villains, with the possible exception of this mother and the son. Again, I can't remember their names in the house when you have an orc chasing him. That was threatening, but like other than that, I don't know. There's just, it's a below average show. I'm sitting there watching it and I'm kind of bored. Getting introduced to Numenor, where Numenor looks beautiful, but again, the writing just isn't there. I'm just bored, and you shouldn't be bored when you're in a Lord of the Rings show and you're 3 episodes through, 3 hours in, and you should know the main characters' names. You should know the overall storyline. If someone were to ask me what the storyline of Rings of Power was, it's like, there's a bad guy, it's back now, and they're trying to stop him. Like, that's, like, they haven't even really tried to stop him yet. They're trying to look for him. Like, that's basically what has come from the show so far. And that's not necessarily from a story standpoint what you want when looking at a Lord of the Rings show. I'm going to give the show the benefit of the doubt. I understand it's only the first 3 episodes, so I'm not going to judge the show entirely. But again, we're 3 hours in, and you're not giving me a whole lot to love other than the visual effects, which is something kind of scary, just something to be worried about. But as a whole, again, when it comes to Christianity, like that's especially what I hammered in my last episode. I'll be able to talk more about whether it undermines the Christian undertones, right? Whether Christianity is still present after the end of the first season when I make a video on it then. Because right now, the first 3 episodes, is Christianity kind of super present? No. It's not super present in the Lord of the Rings movies, but you can tell that it's there. Like, you can tell that the undertones of this idea of good. And then, like, in the show, there's just a lot of cringy dialogue that tries to be inspirational, but it's kind of just, like, not. Like, it's not hitting the mark, and because of that, I think that there could end up being Christian undertones, but as of right now, I'm not seeing it. But again, at least they're not so far entirely throwing out the Christianity that J.R.R. Tolkien, even though he didn't necessarily want to put in there, is evidently in there. Which is just something to point out. Again, I think some people are boycotting the show because they don't want to. That's perfectly okay if you choose to do that. I'll still continue to watch it because. Number one, because I want to give you guys honest feedback, right? I'll watch it so that you don't have to. But then beyond that, like, I still have some hope for the show. I still have some hope for the show that it can turn out to be good. But it's kind of met my expectation so far, with it being below average at best. So now that the topic is done, y'all know what it's time for now. It's time for the Saint of the Week. And today's saint of the week is St. John Chrysostom. Now, St. John Chrysostom's feast day is today, but he also has sort of like a special meaning for me because I'm the chaplain for our speech and debate team at my school, and I kind of chose St. John Chrysostom as our team's patron, primarily because of the way he was able to speak and the impact that he had on people. So I thought doing him for Saint of the Week this week would be absolutely perfect. He was a 4th to 5th century saint and was actually primarily 4th and actually ended up becoming a bishop. But here is where his story really lies. He was known as being one of the best speakers and orators we have ever seen within the church. It was said that even though his body was weak, his tongue was powerful. When he got excited on the pulpit giving a sermon, he would lose. People said he was so energetic and out there, which is amazing. But beyond that, some of his sermons would last up to 2 hours. Guys, we can complain about a priest's homily being long, but 2 hours, people weren't mad about it. They loved it because of how beautifully he was able to articulate what he had to say and the way he called out the high and mighty, which because of how much he wasn't afraid to speak his mind, it would lead to a lot of personal trouble. He would call out those who were wealthy, explain ways that we need to distribute wealth among the poor, give to the poor. And he ended up calling people out of the high court and the empress who were not very pleased about that. People were determined to discredit him, including the Archbishop of Alexandria, who really had it out for John because of his sermons, wanted to banish him. They wanted to get rid of him. And so he ended up being exiled, and he died in exile in the year 407. But what's really cool about his story is that his sermons left such an impact on so many people. It goes to show that what someone's watching, what someone's listening to, can truly, truly impact their way of life, their way in the faith. And it's the same, I'm talking about a TV show here today, right, guys? But it's not a bad thing to sometimes address the media in our world, because the media in our world can be a problem sometimes. And again, like watching media, it's fine as long as it doesn't lead us into sin, as long as it doesn't distract us from God. But ultimately, we need to pay attention to what we're watching, to what we're listening to understand that at the end of the day, we are influenced by it, whether we like to be or not. And St. John Chrysostom is maybe the most ancient example of this, someone who absolutely left an impact on others simply by speaking to them. So now that the topic is done, before you guys click off this video, please click the red subscribe button down below and the button next to it. That way you get notified when a new video comes out. Also, Kinetic Catholic Ministries, we have a shop up, so please go check that out. There's a whole bunch of cool merch that you can check out on there. Please check it out at kineticcatholicshop.com, or go to the website kineticcattholic.com and click the shop tab, and you'll be able to see it from there. Please go to the website. In general, we made a whole bunch of updates with this transition from Kid Catholic to Kinetic Catholic. Kind of is still underway. Please comment any saint or topic suggestions that you might have for future videos. If you want to check us out on all 3 of our social medias, the link to all 3 of those will be in the descriptions down below. Also, I'm not just the YouTube channel host for Kinetic Catholic Ministries, but I'm also a speaker. So if you want to book me to come and speak to your church, school, men's group, youth group, women's group, whatever it might be, please reach out to Kinetic Catholic Ministries, and we will get back to you. Try to look for a date for that. Again, thank you all so much for watching. I hope that you guys are having a wonderful week, a wonderful Tuesday so far. I will see you all next week, and hi, Brielle.